Alright folks, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking on the Podium YouTube channel about putting your flute together. So your family just went out and got a new flute and you're excited to use it and you want to get right to it and make a sound. We're going to go step by step with what I would do with my beginning students in band class to get started with the flute and set yourself up for good habits and a positive experience. So first off, you probably have a beautiful instrument case like this one. It's a hard shell black case. It's got a name brand right here, and it's got two latches right here. I'm going to show you how to open that case, but then I'm going to use an older instrument for most of the demonstrating. The first thing you do is make sure it's right side up. To do that, you find that brand name and make sure it's pointed up toward the ceiling. So, that way we know that it's right side up. Never open your flute on the bus. Don't do it. It's a bad idea. Your friends want to see your flute. It's so beautiful. Everybody loves the flute. No, don't do it. You'll drop it, it'll get dirty, it'll get dented, it'll be out of round, as we say, meaning the things that are circles are not perfect circles. It's a trip to the repair shop, and it's an expensive, stressful thing. Don't get your flute out on the bus. So, we unhinge these latches. This one I have to pull here to loosen, and then bring the latch down over the top. You make sure you can see that. So, when it's latched, it looks like this. I have to flip this up, this over the top, and then it flips forward like that. So from here, I'm going to use this much older Artley flute as my demonstration instrument. It's got some unusual latches on it, which is why I showed you the other one in the first place. There are three pieces inside your flute, as well as possibly some maintenance items. We're just going to go right to it. First things first, this part is the head joint. The head joint is where all of the sound is generated. We're going to spend a lot of time with the head joint today, but I want to show you the other pieces as well very quickly before we do that. This larger part is called the body of the flute. It's long, it's got all the keys on it, it's easy to find. The last piece that only has a few keys on it is the foot joint. We're going to put that on at the end. Right now I'm quickly going to show you how these things fit together, and then I'm going to take them apart again and show you how to generate some sounds. So, let's go back to the head joint. On here we have the lip plate and we have the tone hole. Some books or some resources will use different terms than that, but I call this whole thing the head joint. This is the lip plate, this is the tone hole. Some newer instruments, including the Jupiter Capital Edition flutes, which many of my students have for rentals, have gold lip plates. It's fancy, it's nice, it doesn't really change your sound, but it's a neat thing. Mine is just a silver lip plate. I'm then going to grab the body. On the body there are two ends. There's an end that has some information about your flute right here. Mine says the name of the instrument manufacturer. So I'm going to twist the open end of my head joint into that open end right there. It shouldn't be very hard. I'm going to wiggle and push just a little bit until it's all the way in. Now that it's all the way in, I'm actually going to make a little adjustment. Flutes are actually made to be pulled out the slightest bit. So I'm going to wiggle this out so that there's a little separation between those things. And you'll be able to see it looks like it should be pushed together farther than it is. You can see that gap. That's there on purpose, and it's there to help us play in tune. Your instrument will expand and contract with changing weather and humidity. The flute is designed to be played out a little bit like this so that on a day where you really are flat and you really need to be a little sharper, you can push in to be in tune. So get used to playing with it, I say about half an inch out, but it's really not precise. It varies by the instrument. Secondly, is it lined up straight? The tone hole should line up with this row of keys. Mine is a little bit off center right now. So there we go. Right now my tone hole is lined up with this whole row of keys. You'll probably have two of these circular keys that are not straight. You'll notice that as I pull this up, two of them are pushed over to the side. These two circles, and then the rest are in a row. That's called an offset G, and that's an ergonomic enhancement to the instrument. So that helps you fit your hands on the instrument without having to work too hard, and an offset G is a good thing. My wife is a flute player, and I asked her about an inline G, which is a flute that doesn't have that feature, and she said never buy one for any reason. You don't need it. Just find one with an offset G. And it's actually getting more and more common to not find very many. inline Gs, because offset is preferred by pretty much everyone. You might find an old school player here or there who prefers inline, but I haven't met any. So, if you're an inline G person, find me in the comments. Last, the foot joint. We're going to attach that to the end of the body. Attach the end with all the keys on it, and it'll twist together just like the head joint and the body. In this case, we're going to have the rod of the foot joint bisect the row of keys, meaning it will cut the keys in half. You might think, well, shouldn't we have it this way so that all the keys are in line? No, because this is for your pinky's shorter. We're going to turn it this way so that it bisects all those keys. The flute is now completely assembled. That's how it should be. But for the sake of our first lesson, we do not use the entire flute. It's a huge, huge, huge undertaking to create a good sound using the whole flute already. So we're going to go back to just the head joint. So, flute embouchures can take all shapes and sizes because people's faces are all different shapes and sizes. For the most part, I'm going to give you some guiding principles to get you set up in the best way that I can. It's possible that your teacher will tell you to do something differently than what I've said here, and if that's the case, listen to them. But this tends to help my students quite a bit. So I'll walk you through the process that we use. First off, when you hold this, the open end, right here, is going to point over toward your right shoulder. So for me, that's on this side, but for you watching this video, it's going to be on this side. So, I want to feel this edge of the tone hole, right where my lip meets the skin that is not lip anymore. It's not quite my chin, but it's right here. I can feel that right here, and that's going to be about the right amount of distance away from my mouth. Some people also put the thing right on the center of their lips and then roll down like this. That works too. That's fine. But you'll feel this metal, this lip plate right against right here on your face. Some students, I get, they want to keep it out here away from them. They want physical distance between themselves and the instrument. Not going to work. So if you can feel this with your edge of your lip, then you're in a good place. Take your hand that's near the open end and cover it with your palm. This will just help the first few notes speak. If you blow warm, slow air and you put it in the right direction, that's the sound that you'll get. You can hear me starting the sound with a T or D sound. That's a thing called articulating or tonguing your notes. It's something that you'll have to do a lot as a flute player. So it's good to get that habit started early. If you play with a sound, your sounds just won't start as cleanly and you'll have to change habits later. So let's start with a good habit today. You'll notice that I'm not blowing hard. I'm not doing anything like that. Just I'm blowing down a little bit over the top of the hole. And if I blow cold, fast air, that sound will jump way up high. That's probably a little more power than we need for now, but later on in flute playing, you'll need to use air like that pretty frequently. After you can make a good sound with this covered, low and high, then it's time to uncover the hole. And that's more realistically what your air will feel like when it's actually going through the entire flute. A nice game that I like to play with my students is to take their pinky and sneak it in there while they're making a sound. And that's just a nice way to practice getting a sound. In my school, I see my students about once a week, and I see them for half an hour at a time in their first year. So after I see them for their first flute lesson ever, their assignment before their next lesson is to be able to pick up the head joint and make a good sound every time that they try. I ask them to just hold on to the head joint while you're watching TV or whatever it is that you do, and just constantly be feeling around, because it takes a while to get that feel. As somebody who's a low brass specialist, flute is probably one of my more challenging instruments in the band. And when I was first learning, this is the one that definitely took me the longest. And I'm still not a great flute player, but I've managed to find a few tricks that really help. Another good trick, if you're struggling to get air into the instrument, is to think that you've got a little tiny single grain of rice stuck between the center of your lips. and you're going to try and get it out. My wife, who is a flute specialist, often tells me that my embouchure is too tight and I need to relax it more and pout my lips farther forward. So I've tried to do that as well, but my clarinet habits tend to keep my nose back like this. It's not really what I need. I should be more relaxed, following the natural contour of my face. So, if we now have a good sound on the head joint, we can try to make a good sound on the entire flute. I'm going to put it back into the body with a gentle twist. Leave it out a little bit of the way for tuning. We never talked about this screw on the end of the instrument. Don't unscrew it. Don't do it. Only bad things will happen if you unscrew this thing. Well, what's under there? I want to know. It's really not exciting. What it really is another trip to the repair shop, because you're going to start to take away from the natural suction. Suction's the wrong word. There should be a seal where air goes into the flute and goes this way. And if this seal is not tight, some of it will go this way, and it will just feel wrong, and it will take away from your tone quality, and it'll make you work way too hard. So, if you're going to play the flute, we have to talk about the shape of your hands. I think that the easier shape is your right hand, which is going to make this shape, kind of like a letter C. I put tape on all of my students' flutes so that they know where to put their fingers. I put a little bit of masking tape or a sticker on each one. These three right here are where these three fingers belong. In woodwind playing, these three fingers and these three fingers do a lot of work. So, that's where these three fingers belong. And your pinky goes on this little guy. Your thumb sits underneath and supports the instrument. This pinky key will be pressed down for almost every note that we play on the flute. Almost everyone. Now let's talk about the hand that's a little bit less conventional. This hand, your left hand, makes kind of this shape. When I meet with my students, I do a really extreme version of this. It's the claw, and you pull your fingers way back like this, like you're a horror movie monster. And it's actually not that dramatic, it's just kind of like this. But the flute will rest right here where my pointer finger meets my hand. That's actually what's going to hold up a lot of the weight of the flute. Some students try to pinch it like this. Bad idea. It's going to come back to bite you very soon. So it sits underneath here. There are two thumb keys. I teach my students to use only this one. This one, which is used for thumb B flat, is a helpful key, but we add it later on. In the first lesson, it's always this one. In the front of the instrument, we do not put a finger on this one, ever. We do not put a finger on this one, ever. These three are where your fingers belong. So, we have 1, 2, 3. There's a pinky key here we're not going to use for a while. Skip those ones. 4, 5, 6, and pinky. From there, we point the flute over to the side. Feel that lip plate. Feel that tone hole with your lip, and give it a blow. That's the sound that comes out if you don't press any buttons down at all. Most of the notes we use in band will use the fingers though. So let's learn one right now. I'm going to press down my thumb key with my left thumb and my pointer finger of my left hand. Way down on the opposite end of the flute, everything else is floating except my pinky. That pinky is down for just about everything, and it opens that little hole right there. So, with those two sounds, or with those one thumb, pointer finger, and third pinky, we get that sound, or something like it. If you're blowing really cold, fast air, might come out. Both are correct. We call that sound B. Next, without lifting any fingers up, we're going to add this finger. And if I wiggle that finger up and down, I get that kind of sound. That sound is A. So now we have A and B at our disposal. B, thumb, first finger, and pinky. A, thumb, first finger, second finger. and pinky. With my students, we continue to work down one finger at a time, learning each of the letters B, A, G, F, and E before we get too far. We also add one note that actually has less fingers. If we start with our B but don't use the thumb, we get a C. So C is a little higher sounding than B. We work our way down, and then eventually, after we get all the way to E, we discover our last two notes, D and later E flat, kind of in one full activity. I'll probably make a separate video about that later on. So, if you're making a very good sound on your head joint, and you put it together and you can get a B, and you can get an A, I have a pretty simple song that I like to do with my students that's only B and A. It's two Bs, two A's, and another B. We play in kind of a fun rhythm like this. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. And that's it. I like to play some fun piano stuff underneath that and make a little jazz feel out of it. It's pretty fun. And then we improvise using those two notes. And if we get real exciting, then we start to put down a third finger and we work our way all the way down. There are some teachers out there who will teach things in a different order than what I teach them. Some teachers like to start with a B flat. Some method books start with an F or a D. And if that's the case, then so it is. I think that this is the path of least resistance for getting a student going, getting started, having a positive experience, having a good sound. And I don't like to introduce notation until a few weeks into the school year. This year we started notation in November. Students picked it right up real fast because they were very good at reading 5 or 6 different pitches already. Or not reading, but performing 5 or 6 different pitches. So it was pretty helpful, and if you're a subscriber to the music learning theory way of doing things, which you should be because it's proven, it's got research, proven is the wrong word, but you should know that symbolic association is not the first step in music learning. Symbolic association comes after the oral phase, that is listening and creating sound and mixing it in and getting it to fit. And it's after verbal association where we give something a name. For example, if all I did was show you this and make the sound, we're in the oral stage. When I tell you that that sound is called a B, we're in the verbal association stage. Later on, after we started to put some more pieces together, then we can read it off the page, and that's called symbolic association. So anyway, we've got B, we've got A, and we're off to a great start. So now it's time to put our flutes away and make sure that we do that in a way that is safe. So we twist the head joint off, put it back in its home inside the case. There's usually a wider part, there we go, for the lip plate. Take the body and the foot joint apart, put them where they belong. Make sure everything is snug, close it up, latch it, and we're ready to go. Hopefully this video has been helpful to you. Hopefully you can share this with some people who might be starting to play the flute, a parent of a student who's starting to play the flute, or a teacher who's teaching the flute and maybe would like a little bit of reinforcement with my ideas. So feel free to share. Please like and subscribe. That's a free, fast way to get my information out there and get this video shared and get more people to see it. And I'll see you in the comments. Thanks a lot.